with the Salt Lake Tribune. I'm a reporter here, and typically we write about news all around Utah. This week we've been writing about the Tribune itself, some pretty major changes coming down the pike. That's what we're here to talk about today. I've got interim executive editor David Noyce and executive vice president for the Tribune, Fitzpatrick, on hand. And we're welcoming your questions as we go. So let's jump right in. I'd like to turn to Dave first. Can you describe a little bit of what changes we announced this week?
Some big ones, actually. The first announcement was that the Deseret News and the Salt Lake Tribune were ending their joint operating agreement. This is an operating agreement that was in place, has been in place for 68 years, started in 1952, which allowed the two daily newspapers to share printing production, advertising in their print editions, and delivery of the print edition. It was an agreement then was cemented into place with the Newspaper Preservation Act a couple decades later, or maybe about a decade later. And so both papers essentially are ending that and then going their own separate ways on what they plan to do on print. We've made the decision, our nonprofit board, to go to a weekly print edition that will be delivered by the Postal Service along the Wasatch Front areas and maybe some Wasatch back on Saturdays. It will be that kind of obviously won't be a daily newspaper anymore. That will be a weekly. It will feature our best enterprise work, our best stuff. Hopefully help people really enjoy the experience of reading a very familiar paper. Of course, most of our focus will still be on our digital product. We'll still be updating stories and popping enterprising work throughout the week on our website, following the news and making sure that readers are up to date on everything that's going on in their world.
Mm-hmm. Well, so it really is a major change, especially if you've received the paper every day, and built that in as a habit. There's, I'd like to talk just quickly about or make clear what impact you expect this to have on the Tribune's journalism in general. Would we expect that to change?
Well, I'm actually hoping it will improve our journalism. And what I mean by that is that print has been, the printing a daily paper has been losing money, which has forced us to make cuts. Some were relatively significant in recent years. In order to continue to produce the journalism, we had to make cutbacks, which meant laying off reporters or other staffers and photographers. And now we expect print, depending on how many people take the print product, we expect print can actually start making money, or at least breaking even, but hopefully making money, which will give us more freedom to enhance our journalism even more. So I'm hoping that it will actually lead to better journalism from us and more of it. That's the hope. Mm-hmm. Our journalists are ready to go. They've been operating this model for a while now, actually, and they always think digital first. When can my story go up? When should it go up online so the readers can read it? And then we'll take their digital journals and make it work in our print product, because the stories don't have to change all that much that way. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually hoping it enhances our journalism, that makes our journalism even better. But there's no doubt there'll be an adjustment period.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, this joint operating agreement, it has been a unique kind of documented in the country. I think there are maybe 3 or 4 of these deals left where newspaper competitors are allowed to sort of collaborate in a certain way. But before we jump on the JOA, I wanted to talk with Tim just by way of perspective in terms of this decision is coming after some pretty significant trends over the last 10 years with regard to advertising and circulation revenues for the print edition. Can you talk a little bit about that trajectory over the last 10 years?
That's really the big change here is what's happened in advertising. We really, frankly, continue to see great reader support for print that we would wish we could continue, but basically the economics are such that traditionally 80% of the revenue comes from advertising that you present to the readers who pay the other 20%. Now we actually make more money from the circulation side than from the advertising side. And so the whole operation, I mean, you add that together with the fact that 4 or 5 of our Utah readers are online, and keeping print around as a daily product is just not in our best interest, not in our readers' best interest. We can invest our resources elsewhere and get more for them.
Yeah. And over that same time period, as we've seen that with print, characterize where our online audiences have gone over that same time.
Well, I'm not sure I understand the question.
What have our online audiences done over that period of time?
Oh, well, our online audiences have grown steadily throughout this century. And we've kind of arrived at a point now where it isn't so much about trying to get another page view as it is about trying to establish a stronger relationship with your core readership. And that's where you turn to things like digital subscriptions. And it's not so much how many people can we get to look at something. It's more like, how do we get those people to make us a long-time choice? And we will be there for them. So that's kind of how it's matured, frankly. So it isn't getting audience, frankly, is easy online. All you have to do is dance around, or whatever it is, to draw attention to yourself. But it's a very kind of a short-lived thing. It's too easy to leave. What we want to do is build longer relationships, and we do that with quality.
So we've cultivated online subscribers we've had a paywall for a considerable time right now. We've done relatively well on that. Let's walk through a couple of scenarios. Let's say I'm an ardent online subscriber and have been for a while. What's going to change? What's going to change there for me? What will I see changes in the online edition? And how does that situate me for the print edition, for the new weekly print edition?
We online is in a constant state of improvement. We're going to roll out a new website soon. We're going to roll out a new app soon. All of these are intended to make the experience better, and that will just continue forever, frankly. It's the speed of change on the web is hard to keep up with, frankly. But so to that, we want to expand our reporting staff, that we want to grow data visualization, which is something you can do on the web so much better than print, and more things, that sort of a thing, that is podcasting, the things that we do in print. So we want to expand on all of those things to the extent the audience wants us there.
Now, if I'm a print subscriber right now, I'll automatically, and I want to continue to be a subscriber, I'll automatically get the new weekly print edition when that starts coming out. And I'll also have, if I understand it correctly, unlimited access to the digital. It looks like we're having some technical difficulties with Tim, so I'll throw that out to Dave. Is that what I'm looking at?
Yeah. If you get the daily product, you'll get the week. You'll be signed up automatically for the weekly. Now we're still looking at pricing structures because people buy at different levels. Some people just get the Sunday paper. Some people get 3 days a week. So we have to look at all that. We're still examining that, but that information will be coming out over the next course of the next month. So you'll be automatically enrolled. What was the other part of your question, Tony?
If I'm and then I would have unlimited digital access.
Yes, that's what I understand is how we're looking at it.
Yeah. And then I'm not sure we have all the details, but what would a transition for a pure digital subscriber look like right now? Would you have to pay in addition to get that weekly print edition?
Oh, I'm not sure on that. Are you talking about the digital replica e-edition?
Well, that's it. That's a good point. We've got a number of different products that people subscribe to online.
Right.
But the point being that the specific details as to what I'll get are, some of those are still emerging, but we do know that we'll carry the print subscribers forward, and they'll get this weekly edition and unlimited online access.
Right.
If they want it, they don't have to, but that's our hope.
Yeah. So we are getting some questions about the PDF style daily, which I'm taking to be the online edition. Are we going to still offer that, Tim?
We're looking at options there.
Yeah.
It is what we want to preserve is the morning ritual, that we're not going to give you paper, but we do understand that there's a reader out there that wants that. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I've been cutting out, sorry. So there's a couple ways to do that. One is through a morning newsletter. And then another way is to see if we can continue to produce something that probably wouldn't be identical to what we're producing now in the way of an e-edition, but some sort of a digital replica that reflects our news judgment, which is something that is important to people. And also they want a finite package. They don't want the web, and the website in general is bottomless. People want to get up in the morning and get something that will get them through the day, inform them enough to operate without overwhelming them and without spending 2 hours. Mm-hmm. So it's coming up with that morning package so that it's right there with the coffee or whatever else, and that still functions. And it can include things like a morning crossword puzzle and a couple of comics or puzzles or whatever it is. But we want to preserve that ritual, but without producing it on print.
Okay.
Tony, can I say one thing on the e-edition? I'm a huge fan of the digital replica e-edition. I look at that every single morning. I actually have a great print delivery person. My paper lands on my doorstep sometimes at 2 or 3 in the morning. So it's there. And my print, the digital replica doesn't usually come for a couple hours later. But I love going through the digital replica. My hands stay clean. I don't have newsprint on it, even though I have newsprint in my blood. But I love looking at that. So we are really examining what we can do to keep that moving forward. It won't be exactly the same, but hopefully still, feed that appetite of seeing what we think are the most important, what professional journalists are saying, here's the most important news on the front page, and then in a little deeper, other things you should know, and then just things you can do. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of what Tim said, that morning ritual, but I'm a huge fan of that. We are certainly looking at that.
Okay, so just to back up a little bit, on Monday, the two papers announced this joint operating agreement, which they've maintained for almost 70 years, would expire at the end of this year. And that is resulting in the closure of our of a printing plant, a shared printing facility out in West Valley. Can you give us just Tim, can you give us just a few contours on that? Like how many people are out there and what do we understand is supposed to happen out in West Valley?
Well, they're closing up shop. I can't remember exactly what their employee count is, but it's over 100.
161.
Yeah.
161.
And that is, talk about the change. Those are the folks that are facing a major change. Mm-hmm. The printing facility, in one of the earlier deals, the printing facility is owned completely by the Deseret News. Mm-hmm. So what happens to that building, what they do with it, that's up to them. We'll just be done with it at the end of this year. Mm. But the plan is to close up Utah Media Group, that business. And those employees did get notification of that. So again, the change is much bigger for them than it is, frankly, for the editorial staffs of the two papers that will go on in different forms.
Yeah. So at that juncture, it was clear that the Deseret News and the Tribune were kind of going their separate paths moving forward, and some of the news releases said that they each had their own kind of independent strategies for meeting print demand. Then on Tuesday, after the Tribune had announced its plans to scale back to the weekly edition and the other changes, on Tuesday, our competitor, the Deseret News, announced it too would be going to a weekly paper catering to Utah readers, and that will preserve the name Deseret News. And then they're also launching a national magazine that will be available both in print and digitally. And so that gives us a kind of a picture of what the competitive situation between the two papers might look like kind of going forward. We had a question from one reader that asked basically that the Salt Lake Tribune and the Deseret News are on a roughly equal competitive footing now, daily online coverage and weekly print edition. And the reader is asking if we would characterize it that way, that it is roughly equal competitive footing now. What's your take on that?
I suppose you could say that, and frankly, I suppose you could say that was true before.
Yeah.
When we were in a JOA, even though we were collaborating on certain things, really, frankly, we may be the best argument in the country for a JOA in the sense that the two papers have fairly distinct different audiences, and so we. I suspect they'll hang on to their audience and we'll hang on to ours. There is the web allows much more overlap of that. In the old days, you took one paper or the other, but nowadays you can move back and forth a little bit more. But you generally tend to have your favorite, and I suspect those favorites will be maintained.
Well, and just kind of underscores that not only is this sort of long enshrined kind of daily routine for the Tribune reader going away, we've printed downtown since 1871, I believe, was the year we started. Deseret News has been printing for even longer, and so talk just a little bit about this sort of a broader shift in habits that we're talking about, primarily for an older reader that kind of used to sitting at the breakfast table with their coffee cup. That there is a tradition here that is indeed going away. We're going to replace it with a lot of online products and weekly products and that sort of thing, but nonetheless, there is a tradition expiring here.
One element of that we need to do, and we're working on it, is outreach. That we want to make sure that our traditional print readers, especially those that aren't necessarily that digitally savvy, are able to get to us, are able to get what they want from us. And that's going to be, I think, a certain amount of training, whatever kind of help messaging we can do to help people get through. That daily newsletter, I think, will be important. There's just a lot of things that we can do to help people through this, frankly. We're not going to hang on to all of them, frankly, but we do want to meet them as much as we can in the middle.
We've had a question from Facebook on how this will affect subscription costs. I think we were kind of generally headed to a $5 per weekly edition kind of price last I checked, but a lot of other kind of ramifications or combinations in subscription rates. I don't think we know the answer to that yet, but I'll just throw out the reader's question. How will this affect subscription costs?
We haven't set a price, and it's really will be more than one price. We have to set a price for whatever the single copy rate is, but then we'll also have some kind of subscription packages. The one thing I can tell you is that all of our print subscription packages will include unlimited access to our digital products. That if you're buying the print product, you will get the digital product. But beyond that, we have some work to do to try to figure that out. And I guess by way of a warning, I guess I would say that it's not going to be 1/7 of the price of the 7-day. That's just sort of part of the reality. But again, we consider this to be the best of, if you will. So it will be more expensive than a single daily paper.
We've had another question, and I don't know if we know the answer to this yet, but who will print these weekend newspapers, or at least who will print the Tribune's newspaper?
We've been. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're trying to find that. We're figuring. We're talking to printers. It's a little bit easier to find a printer when you're printing once a week versus somebody who can do this every night. So that's part of the advantage of closing up the JOA, is that we don't have to own our own press anymore. We can be a little bit. It's easier to use somebody else's.
It will be a printer in Utah, obviously. That's one thing our board chairman has said. Paul Huntsman, that it will be a printer in Utah, of course, so we can get it to those post offices.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing too is mail delivery. That it's not going to arrive by carrier first thing in the morning before dawn. It's going to arrive in the mail, and I believe that'll be in the mail on Saturday for most of our readers along the Wasatch Front.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I've been a student, if you will, of this joint operating agreement of ours for at least the number of years that I've been here. There's some interesting kind of ramifications with regard to kind of doing away with that. But what I'd like to talk about is we've been a 2 newspaper town, and you know, that's been the case for a lot longer than virtually any other metropolitan area in the country. We've been able to sustain 2 newspapers thanks to this joint operating agreement. And the JOA in its original sort of form was built on this idea that Salt Lake City needed to protect 2 distinct editorial voices in the city. That was sort of the basis for which this thing was approved by Congress in the early 50s. Do you see I mean, digital has obviously really transformed that picture in terms of the ability of us to reach our readers, but how do you think this changes the dynamics of editorial voices from the 2 dailies in town? I mean, is it really a change in that part of the landscape?
I guess we'll see if it will. One thing I've noticed, Tony, and you may have noticed as you were reporting, when you're talking to a source or somebody, and they'll sometimes say, well, isn't the Tribune and the Deseret News the same thing? Mm-hmm. Because the joint operating agreement sort of muddles the picture, you know, by removing some of those anti-monopoly statutes, allow them to share some business operations. Now, everyone's going to know what we've all known for years, which is that we're distinct, that we're separate, that the Deseret News editorial decisions and coverage of news is their business, and we cover it the way we do. I think the thing that's unique about Salt Lake City and the area here, of course, is who owns the Deseret News. Mm-hmm. The Deseret News ultimately is owned by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is a pretty dominant player in this state, not just in aspects of faith, but in aspects of politics and policy and culture and education. The Tribune has always prided itself as being that kind of counterbalance, kind of an independence, at least. Although many of the news stories, you know, may have a different flair, but they're pretty straight, and you'd probably get the some of it, the gist, from reading either paper. However, the Tribune's has, I think, much more freedom to cover a lot of stories that the Deseret News can't or won't. And I think that will continue. I'm not putting down the Deseret News, you know, it's just the fact of life that we come from different perspectives, and in some cases our audiences are a bit different also, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, the Deseret News talked about faith and family a lot. Now, that's not to say that the Tribune doesn't believe in covering faith and family. It's just that we don't necessarily have a vested interest in an outcome for one particular religion. Mm-hmm,
mm-hmm. Well, so just to put a sharp underline under that, none of these changes should portend to the reader that we're going to somehow step back on watchdog coverage, independent journalism. If anything, this is a financial step in the direction of fortifying that. Is that fair?
Well, I think the Tribune's always been known for its watchdog journalism. That's a marker we've had not in matters of government. We won a Pulitzer Prize several years ago for watchdog journalism, of which BYU was a main source in that, a main player in that coverage, in how they treated sexual assault victims. So, I mean, that's going to continue. And like I say, I'm hoping, and we're hoping, that by saving money that we've been spending on print and actually using that money, and because we're nonprofit, it goes right back into the operation, we can actually enhance our journalism. We have no plans to step back. In fact, my charge from the board is to step forward and step on the gas more on that kind of journalism. And I'm sure our new editor will obviously be hired to do the same thing.
Yeah. So if those plans come to fruition, we could indeed see additional reporters and additional coverage rather than any kind of cutback.
That's the hope, obviously, but we still are trying to get our equal footing here, get on solid footing to do that. But that's the aim, is to enhance our journalism.
Yeah. And to be clear, all of those roles of newsprint and those people working out in West Valley City and all those vans, that costs a lot of money, and we are now not spending that. And so this is a financial move towards at least shoring up our bottom line. To some extent. This goes to a question also from Facebook. Are we going to be healthier now, or is this another step towards extinction? And I suppose we don't know the definitive answer, but this is our best shot at making things healthier.
If it's a step toward extinction, I think we back that asteroid back a lot, okay, from hitting us. I think we might have some more time, that's for sure. I mean, we intend to be here for the long haul. That's why the nonprofit was set up that way. To go in it for the long haul and be a community asset that really serves the community. Right.
And it's important to note that too, that these changes come as the Tribune is also kind of evolving as an institution. We received IRS approval to go nonprofit late last year, and we're the first U.S. legacy paper to try that, to go nonprofit. And so my point there being, Tim, is it fair to kind of see these changes in print as part of a kind of broader attempt to solidify the Tribune's financial future?
Yes, I think this change probably would have happened even if we were still for profit. Everything in place to make this happen was going to happen anyway, frankly. But there's no question that going to a nonprofit puts us on better footing. We have donation income, we have grant income, we have sources that we didn't have before, and honestly, some of that is we have an audience that wants us, that is so interested in wanting us sticking around, that they're willing to pay us more than just what it costs to subscribe. And so we are finally, I used to say that we always felt the love, it just didn't convert to cash. And so some of that love is converting to cash now. So there are still many questions. We don't know how big we can be. It will be determined by the support we get. But right now it looks like we can grow.
Okay. All right. And that's an important point too, maybe to close on, is that with this transition to nonprofit, the Tribune is really turning into something that belongs to the community. It's got a 9-member community board drawn from, kind of all walks of life within the community. This move to nonprofit is really about, us being a community asset. Is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah. And, I've been in since I've become the interim editor, but eager to get back to my old duties. I've met with the board several times, and they've communicated with me. They're all sold on keeping this Tribune solid, strong, aggressive journalism, meaningful journalism, insightful journalism, entertaining journalism, all of that. They're committed because they're committed to this community. They own businesses here. They have kids in school here. They go to churches here and worship, and they're all just as committed as we are to serving our readers and serving this community.
So any closing points either of you would like to make?
Do you want the editor's job, Tony? Do you want the editor's job? You can have it right now if you want it. No, we do expect a new editor within a couple of months. Okay, within a month or a month and a half, a permanent editor who will have a lot to say about how we deploy our resources.
And I would just add that we have more to say about our transition, about pricing, about e-edition, about other things about accommodating readers who are used to the old way and trying to help them with the new way, and all of that. We'll have more on that.
All right. Well, that's all we have time for. Thank you very much to you both, Dave Noyce and Tim Fitzpatrick, for joining us today. Thanks to viewers out there. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tony.
Everyone stay safe, okay?